Hello, friends of Rumble Book Club. On behalf of the concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I would like to wish you all a happy. Welcome to Rumble Book Club. I'm your host, Mike Hernandez, and this is the show where a normal guy like me can talk about interesting books I read, old and new, good and bad. So if you like the show, you like the content, or maybe you just think this whole month is ludicrous, well, you've come to the right place, my friend. You can follow us on Twitter, Getter, TikTok, and Parler, or you can subscribe right down below on YouTube and Rumble. But more importantly, be a part of the conversation. Share these videos with your friends, comment down below, hit that little bell, that way it lets you know when each of the new videos comes out. And let me know what you think about the books and my commentary, if you think I'm right or wrong on any of my analysis. And even donate to the show if you want. It always helps to provide books and sound equipment and all that to make this show great. Okay, friends, we're going to take a look at an exciting new book that just came out, and I just finished it last night. It came out the day before, so it's all been a really exciting experience. Today we're going to take a look at What is a Woman by Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is a political commentator, author, and host of the Matt Walsh Show on the Daily Wire. He created the documentary that is based on this book with the same name, and his focus these past 2 years has been on the gender identity debate as we see it today. So let's start with the aesthetics. Very, very busy on the eyes, given the fact that the cover does have some comedy. I kind of chuckled when I first saw it. I will give it a little bit of grace, although not that much more than if a book didn't. So as far as the aesthetics go, 6 out of 10. Now let's look at the readability. The book is written with Walsh's approachable style, with dry humor. He's a sarcasm machine, but the language and pace that he uses throughout the book make it easy to read despite a lot of the, we'll call it questionable, if you want to be meaner, you might say twisted logic of the people that he interviews in many of the cases. But as far as your ability to actually read it and understand it, perfect readability score, 10 out of 10. All right, buckle up, everybody. This is probably going to be a longer content evaluation than we typically do. So looking at the content, Walsh documents his journey across the United States and even as far as Africa, as he asks pointed questions about the origins, development, spread, and effects of the modern gender movement. His primary question, what is a woman, seems to particularly stump many people carrying the torch for the trans movement. He speaks to transgender people, psychologists, college professors, senators, doctors, therapists, parents, athletes, activists, and surgeons on both sides of the issue to hear them make their case on their side. He doesn't try to build a straw man argument and knock it down just from the conservative perspective. He's actually trying to get the strongest arguments from both sides. He also dives into the origins of the gender debate and where modern theories of gender and human sexuality come from. The results of his search are pretty troubling, to say the least. The history of the movement can be traced back to several disturbed individuals in particular, such as Alfred Kinsey, the father of the sexual revolution, and John Money, the father of modern gender theory as we know it, and the man who originally used the term gender to describe something unrelated to language and scientific classification. These were both broken men from broken homes and projected their own sexual proclivities and fantasies onto society around them and used their positions in the academic and scientific community to convince others that their own personal habits and desires belong to every other American. Kinsey in particular had no experience with human behavior, human biology, or anything like that. His primary field of expertise was wasps. So that's kind of ludicrous there. He couldn't really use the argument of authority there. They used and targeted children for much of their studies, and the sexual and psychological abuse the children suffered is both horrific and very, very infuriating. In some cases, as with Kinsey, the sexual experiments included children as young as 6 months old. In Money's case, 2 twin boys, the Reimer twins, were so mentally disturbed from his work with them, again, a lot of it having to do with their sexuality and exploiting them sexually, that both died young, one of a drug overdose and the other to suicide. Most of the book compiles his interviews predominantly with proponents of the modern trans movement. He interviews doctors and surgeons that prescribe puberty-blocking drugs and cross-sex hormones to children, as well as perform surgeries, including, among other things, mastectomies, phalloplasties, and vaginoplasties, as well as the myriad of other surgical procedures that might be used to help modify or correct these surgeries when a lot of them inevitably go wrong. He speaks to people on every part of the chain, leading a young child from a normal life to a life of a fully operated on transgender person, from the affirming counselor to the drug prescribing doctor to the operating surgeon. Each part of the chain he interviews gives no indication that they want anything other than to push the child further along the one specific road that they're financially incentivized to push them down. Matt also talks to female athletes, business owners, and parents who have been demonized by the media and received threats due to speaking out against this movement in any way. One dad in particular in Canada was actually arrested for not affirming his daughter's gender when his daughter tried to present as male. One of the more impactful interviews for me was reading about his interview with Scott Nugent, a mother of 3 who took hormones and received full operations to give herself the appearance of a man. In her own words, she describes how she was taken advantage of in her vulnerable discomfort with herself as a lesbian by her therapist and her process of transition. She adamantly declares that she can never be a man and that the financially incentivized doctors who operated on her pay no price whatsoever for the botched surgeries they performed on her and the myriad health problems she now suffers, because it's all considered experimental medicine, so they're allowed to essentially treat human beings as guinea pigs and feel no consequences whatsoever if they do anything wrong. There's no basis of care because this care has never been offered like this before. And what's crazy, you can go on her actual website. Her story is far from the only one. And Matt finally gives a reprieve from all this Western chaos, this Western way of life, by traveling all the way across the world to Africa to talk to the Maasai people, a tribe of African natives who have maintained their way of life for thousands of years with almost no influence from Western life. So it is a very primitive lifestyle, and their contact with Westerners is very limited. So one of the reasons he does this is because there's an argument made by many progressives here in the United States and in the Western countries that gender roles and sex roles are just an invention of the West. It's just something we created to keep people in line. But this argument kind of breaks down as Matt asks the Maasai people what they determine as a man and what they determine as a woman and what roles are determined by sex. And oddly enough, their belief mirrors to much extent our own up until a few years ago, before all this gender theory really started breaking outside of academia. He asks them about modern gender theory while having, in many cases, to explain to them a lot of this glossary that's just been created within the past few years. And they seem both amused and completely perplexed by this way of life while being very secure and at peace and very happy with their own. And Matt uses this to kind of draw a distinction between a very primitive way of life and a very civilized way of life, and how the primitive people that have no experience with all this modern gender theory seem happy. They seem genuinely secure in their position in life, their role, what their duty is in life, and they seem to live and die very secure in who they are. And yet we're this highfalutin decadent society that has become miserable in our own process of navel gazing. So as far as the content goes, I mean, this is an incredibly informative book, but it's definitely not for the weak of stomach. As far as the content goes, perfect score, 10 out of 10. Matt Walsh really outdid himself. This is an absolutely extraordinary book. If you are mature enough to handle the very adult content in this book, I would highly recommend you buy it. I got this book online. I pre-ordered it on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon too, because trust me, no bookstore is going to release this. Go out and buy it on Amazon. Thanks for watching, everybody, and go read something.